Turk of the Year 2024, we're all gonna weigh in on it, and then you guys are gonna weigh in on it at tyt.com, and we're gonna take down any account and make a final conclusion at the end of this segment. So it's exciting. We don't even yet know who's gonna win. But let's get it rolling. Dr. Rashad Ritchie, host of Indisputable, is also senior advisor to the Carter Center, so he couldn't be with us today because of the passing of Jimmy Carter, but he sent in a taped answer to this. So let's go to Rashad first.
All right, once again, I could not be there live with you, but I want to tell you my jerk of the year. Not hard for me, not difficult at all. MAGA, every single one of them. Everyone who is a MAGA supporter, even if you are a MAGA supporter by way of proxy. Because at this point, it is impossible to disconnect the man and the brand. If you support Donald Trump, you are MAGA. I don't give a damn what you call yourself. If you support Trump, you are MAGA. What has MAGA done? Not only have they elected a tyrant, they have also in the process dismantled so many significant opportunities at progress, so many real moments of coalition building that many engaged in prior. A lot of this will be unraveled, obviously, and many attempts will be done to make it seem as if this is going to make America great again. The real attempt is to make America white male dominated again. The reason why there's no real ideological dynamic happening with MAGA is because their true ideology is white male dominance. It's power. That's it. The policies are secondary. The people are not typically even really considered when you look at the ridiculous nature of their policies. And so my jerks of the year, MAGA. And while right now, history may judge them, I don't know, in a more moderate way, fast forward 10, 20 years from now, it will be clear. It will be clear their roles as villains in the great historical narrative of America.
Okay, so interesting take on it. A whole group of people, as John did in the positive direction for Turk of the Year with World Central Kitchen. There's some parts that I don't agree with Doc on. So I don't think everybody that voted for Trump is necessarily a MAGA, and I don't think MAGA is necessarily a monolith. But I certainly hear what he's saying, and both he and I fought tooth and nail against Trump winning this time around. We wish the Democratic Party had joined that fight with as much fervor as we had, but it didn't wind up that way. JR and John, let me get your thoughts on that real quick.
Okay, so as far as this pick goes, I've been saying this in many of the videos that we've had going up on watch list lately since the election, as we're leading up to it, but specifically after. It's wait and see time. So as things unroll, as predictions were made, as warnings were handed out, as signals were given from the folks that are running for president, as Donald Trump was running, and then chose J.D. Vance, and they explicitly said what they're about and what they want to do. Whether or not they can do it or not, those are the mechanisms that are in place left. But we do know what it is that they said. We can only believe what comes out of their mouths. So as far as when it comes to, the whole group of folks that I believe were fooled by this, that believed in something else or thought they believed in something else, but were actually taking into the fake populism that was that was spread all over the place, thinly veiled with all the rest of the hate that was tossed in there with it. But it's just a matter of seeing if they follow through. So my name is Bennett, and I'm no longer in it. It's time to watch and see how this goes down. So maybe as things come together and my predictions come to what it could be, I think maybe many of those folks may not necessarily call themselves that anymore, because they had a different idea of what MAGA was versus what it actually is from the leadership perspective of it. Because so many people that maybe wouldn't have thought that they would go that direction, went in that direction, maybe you were sold a bad bill of goods.
Yeah, I agree with JR. I mean, we're gonna find out, right? We're gonna find out over the next 4 years what folks are about and what they really believe, and we're gonna find out if it's a monolith or not a monolith, and we're gonna find out if some of them regret it or don't regret it. So I hear you on all that. John, why don't you weigh in on that and then make your pick?
Look, it's difficult because I try to be understanding of the fact that there's a lot of justifiable reasons for people to have, been frustrated after the last 4 years economically and all that. I also try to understand that as much as like when I think about what it takes to like pull the lever or press the button on Donald Trump, like to me there are 10,000 things that go along with that. And I have to understand that for a lot of people they don't pay as much attention, and so for them that list is not 10,000 things long. And many of the things, the negative things that I would put on that list, they're not even aware of. But at the same time, it's not new. This is not the first time. Trump's presidency is not purely hypothetical. We've been through it for 4 years. We know how it ended the first time. There are a lot of things that you can't not know when you agree with that. And so I understand what Dr. Ritchie is saying. I would say for me, the extent to which someone is really like into it and really into Trump, I think that can tell you a lot, and very little of it, I think from an outsider's perspective, is positive. So that's where I'd put most of my rage or disappointment or judgment, or however you'd term it, I guess.
And who's your jerk of the year, John?
So my jerk of the year, I went back and looked because I wasn't sure who I had done last year. I suspected I was repeating myself, but I don't apologize for it. It is once again 2 years in a row, maybe 3 years in a row. It's Elon Musk. And I fear it's gonna be Elon Musk for a while. I don't know what's gonna happen. He's a weird guy who leads a weird life. Weird things happen to people like that. I don't know. But anyway, he's terrible in all the ways, basically every single way. Him and Donald Trump kind of occupy the S tier of being crap, I think. And I don't know if there's anyone else really on that level. For two reasons. One, they get there because they have basically every negative characteristic a person can have. They've managed to fit all the bad personality characteristics, personal failings, emotional shortcomings, all those things. They have all of them simultaneously. But that by itself wouldn't get you to the S tier. It's that they have all of the resources and influence and access to be anyone they want to be, and they've chosen to be this, which is so much worse than like a poor middle class person being crap like this. Elon Musk could solve guinea worm every week. If he wanted to be like Jimmy Carter, if he wanted to get that sort of like adulation and all that, he could solve a world problem every single week and his wealth would still grow. And he chooses not to do that. He chooses to be this cringy, needy, thirsty, horny for attention lackey to right-wing trolls on Twitter, and that's terrible. They are both, but maybe him more in your face, examples of everything that people should aim not to be, and in particular, everything that men should aim to never be even close to being. So he's my jerk of the year.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, you did not.
I could go into specifics if you'd like, but that's the general.
But
tell me how you really feel.
Yeah, I won't go too long, but a little bit on that, because especially after we've seen this election go by, we've seen folks start to coalesce and run to Donald Trump, and many of them being other billionaires. I mean, they think and they see, oh, this is how it works. Oh man, I wish I would have dove in a little bit sooner. Because as we know, rich donors give to both parties, and they just figure whoever wins, they can control them either way it goes. Except in this particular case, Elon Musk, I think he kind of gave to both for a while, and then decided on this particular one, had horrible things to say about Donald Trump before that, like everyone else in the Republican Party. But then figured, I can control him. And we're seeing him start to pull those levers already. We'll see how successful he is with it. But other people, Bezos, Zuckerberg, I believe the owner from the LA Times, these folks that run many of these publications that then want to pull back on any of the normal opinion pieces that may say something that may get them in some trouble with the guy that they now need to work with in order to make more money. So John, when you talked about other things he could be doing to get the adulation that he wants, then he could do them, but if he had done them, he wouldn't have what he wants, which is more money. That's the starting point. That's the ending point. Nothing else matters.
Yeah. So of all the things that you guys have said, a lot of truth in all of that. But the most compelling was, to me, for in the moment, was what John said about all the other things he could do with his money. Like, he could literally solve world hunger by himself, unilaterally, and we'd be done with it. And that sounds unbelievable, but there is actually a number where you would have enough money for the infrastructure to get folks the food and the actual food itself, and it's well within his a possibility for him, right? That he could easily do it. And instead of doing things like that help, he's chosen for more self-aggrandizement and a bigger ego. And my God, he's got to beat Jeff Bezos. So, yeah, I mean that's a hell of a choice. Okay, so I'm going to read some of our member comments on who they think should be Turk of the Year in a second, and we're going to get the results of the poll from TYT.com out of the choices that you have. And then there's one, I have to confess, one egregious non-choice in there that we'll talk about in a second. But JR, you're next. Who do you have as Turk of the Year?
I'll also take Astro off the bat before I even get to the details of him. Tim Scott, Senator Tim Scott, not a huge name within politics, but you know what? Big enough, because I think he illustrates a big thing that's wrong with our elected leaders. Yes, he's still a senator. He's actually now been nominated, I think, going to go ahead and be the chair of the National Republican Senatorial Committee, where he's going to help them try and win more elections, especially in the midterm, to try and keep their momentum going. But Tim Scott ran for president. Tim Scott, previous to running for president and also being a senator, South Carolina, Tim Scott had a moment of clarity. And this is, I guess, more that just spoke to me about it. There was a moment a few years ago when Tim Scott went on the Senate floor and gave an impassioned speech, a detailed account of what happened to him when he showed up at the Capitol without his Capitol or a senatorial pin on, something as small as that. But the officers that stopped him didn't believe it. They didn't believe that he was actually a senator. And he had this moment where his brain woke up and there was this coolness that went over his bald head. And he said, I think I know why they don't believe that I'm a senator. And he relayed that message to everyone that was listening in that session. And I was like, man, Tim Scott had that moment, because I'm a big believer in, there's a point when you can tell people what you believe and see in front of them, but then there's a point sometimes they need to experience it. And I said, Tim Scott experienced it. And as many things I disagree with Tim Scott about politically, I think he finally figured out one big thing that has nothing to do necessarily with politics. We use it in political discussions and discourse, but this is about our society. And he knew it. But once you're in politics, you can no longer know things. You can no longer say things that you've experienced and then convey that to the way that you legislate and the way that you interact with folks. You have to have this cover, this veneer of BS. And I was like, Tim Scott maybe get it. And so I've been paying closer attention to Tim Scott since that speech. And Tim Scott reverted right back to being the guy that just says, yes, whoever is in power, this now being Donald Trump, that's my guy. And for a second, let me try to find a way to not be Donald Trump, because he was running for president as well. Tim Scott was. And he just fell right back into it to a degree that was groveling, that was giving up on anyone else who had been an ally of his, particularly Nikki Haley, and just dropped back to a knee and kissed the ring one more time. And it was one of the biggest disappointing things that I'd seen. Not because I was totally surprised by it, because most of our politicians do things like that, but he publicly told everyone, I had a wake-up moment. And now he's telling everybody, never mind. It was weird. It was crazy to me.
Yeah. And of course, Nikki Haley appointed him to a seat. That's how he got the power in the first place. Then he betrayed her to get more power from Donald Trump. And then stepped into the mic in that moment that we all remember, seared in our minds if you follow politics closely in the campaign, and said to Trump, no, that's because I love you, man.
I just love you.
Yeah, there you go. That's so sad. All right, John, real quick thought on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because if I was putting together like a list, I don't even know if he'd be like in my top 20 for the year. But I totally understand how a person can like perfectly symbolize a specific issue you have with our politics or with elections or with our culture. And clearly for me, Elon Musk is that. But yeah, I get it. For me, Tim Scott, it just like he's given this opportunity. He can be a senator. He has enough, notice or whatever that he can run for president or whatever. And just none of it's anything. He's just a big nothing in the end because he lacks, I don't know, the boldness, the courage, or the ability to fight back against this horrible party that he's chosen to be a part of. And so just it just feels like a big nothing at the end of the day.
I would advise anyone that cares about anything that Tim Scott has done, watch that entire speech he had about being profiled. Dude was spitting. Just trust me. He was saying everything that made sense because it happened to him. And now that's not him anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, let me have the audience weigh in first before I get to my jerk of the year. On Twitch, Embedded Dude said, my jerk of the year would be Congress for taking AIPAC donations and doing their bidding. A super fair point. Lou Indagio said the worst person in 2024 has to be Netanyahu, right? Certainly a very fair point. Eclectic Miscellanea on TYT.com memberships section said the jerk of the year AIPAC. So a similar theme there, and I wanted to make sure that they had a voice. Amatoyo1 said, I was tied between Biden and MAGA. I don't care that they aren't all racist, xenophobic, sexist, etc. They excuse and accept it. They don't care that he's not going to do anything to help their circumstances. January 6th was not enough. His past performance is not enough, which is also why Biden sucks. He knew what we were up against and stayed. He's just as responsible as they are. So that's a really interesting opinion. Wolf Dragon Donna said, Biden is the jerk of the year. If he hadn't run, Musk would be irrelevant and we wouldn't be in this mess. So that's super interesting as well. So who did I pick for jerk of the year? I picked Joe Biden. And there's two reasons why. Then I'm going to tell you a person that arguably we all should have picked. Two reasons is, number one, through Gaza and his actions there, he showed that Joe Biden is not the sweet, empathetic man that we were told about through the last 50 years of corporate marketing, otherwise known as cable news and mainstream media. And they all said, oh, he's a regular guy from Scranton and he's the average Joe. And they made every excuse for him. In reality, his nickname back in the Senate was the senator from MBNA, which was a credit card company in his home state that he took so much campaign contributions for that the rest of the senators joked about how he was their bought fool, right? But that guy became our president and the press kept covering for him. Now we know that he actually, his mental decline, according to his own staff, began the day that he stepped into office, but mainstream media protected him. But when on the issue of Gaza, he was confronted with, you could either try to win this election, especially Michigan is on the line, let alone the fact that there's a genocide that's happening, and we all said never again for our whole lives, or you could do what your donors told you to do, ordered you to do, and Joe Biden made clear who he is. He said he never once moved off of the donors for all of his talk of, oh, we're gonna get a ceasefire. Oh, I'm gonna hold Netanyahu accountable. Oh my God, I'm drawing a red line. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. He never delivered on any of it. He never once helped the Palestinians. In fact, not only did Israel get the $4 billion that they normally get every year, why? No one knows. I mean, our theoretical special ally has taken inflation adjusted over $300 billion from us all of these years. And Biden helped them with that gravy train because why? He's gotten over $11 million from AIPAC throughout his career, so he's corrupt. And here, I mean, he showed the corruption in spectacular fashion. He never once held them accountable. On top of that, he demanded that we send them $26 billion more very late in the genocide as kind of a thank you note for massacring all those Palestinians. But it was also symbolic. That was Biden and the Democratic leadership saying, no matter how much it hurts us electorally, no matter how much it shows that we're frauds and that we never cared about any other human being, we're always going to serve and obey the donors. And that's who Joe Biden is. He's a senator from MBNA. He's a senator from AIPAC. He's the senator from every corrupt donor that has infested our politics for the last 50 years in this country. But secondarily, or as a second reason, not secondarily, another giant reason why it's Joe Biden is because it was very obvious that he was in mental decline, shaking hands with invisible people, saying his uncle was eaten by cannibals, just in utter mess, and well before the debate. But then, of course, at the debate, he said that we finally defeated Medicare and was literally falling apart at the seams mentally. And it was just one of the saddest things I've ever seen. But even after the debate, he should have done it years ago, but even after the debate, no. My ego is the most important thing in the world. Well, you said defeating Donald Trump was the most important thing, that our democracy was on the line, that everything was on the line. And he decided, no, I don't care that I'm in mental decline. I don't care about anything. I don't care about democracy. I don't care about this country. I don't care about my party. We could bring in any one of 10 governors who could have a real run at Donald Trump. But no, it has to be me, he said, with the giant sickening ego that this pathetic man has. And so he dragged everyone down with him. Even after the debate, he took forever to get out of the race, to the point where we couldn't have a real primary. And not only that, he had the DNC literally cancel primaries in Florida, take people off the ballots all across the country. Legitimate US congressmen running for president, they would just take them off the ballots, because he never believed in democracy. The only thing that Joe Biden has ever believed in is his donors and his ego. He's one of the worst politicians of my lifetime. I'm sickened that he was the leader of the Democratic Party. Well, at the end, he crashed the Democratic ship right into that iceberg. And now he's talking about, well, if I had stayed in the race, I would have beaten Trump. No, you delusional old fool. Get the hell out of politics in our lives as quickly as you can. You should be embarrassed for the rest of your life that you led to this loss for the party and for the country. You helped Donald Trump more than anyone else, more than Elon Musk, more than MAGA, more than anyone else, by keeping every other qualified Democrat out of the race for your insatiable ego. The man lied to us over and over and over again, and I'm begging you guys, do not ever listen to Democratic leadership. They never have your best interest in mind. They only have their best interest in mind and their donors' best interest in mind. So I think Biden, except for one guy we didn't mention, is the obvious and overwhelming jerk of the year. I don't think it's within miles of close. That's obviously my opinion. So I'm gonna get to your votes in a second, but the guy we should have had on the list, and the only one who could compete with Biden and maybe even beat him, is the guy that he financed, Benjamin Netanyahu, the terrorist leader of Israel. JR.
That's what I was thinking. Netanyahu obviously is the guy on the list that was the part of carrying this whole thing out, that they're still carrying out. But he can only ask for the money. Who gave it to him? And also, I remember the moment, it's really fast. There was a moment right at the beginning of Joe Biden's term when he said, and it was a bit of a surprise to everyone. And he's like, he insinuated, or maybe even completely said, I'm not gonna run again. And I got excited. I was like, oh, clear thought, good. And then like a week or two later, he changed his mind. I was like, why? I was like, that he made a good choice one time, finally made that good choice to not do it for the sake of this weird obsession we have with you're not a real president unless you win 2 terms. We're speaking of Jimmy Carter right now. The reasons why so many people just bash one of the best human beings that's ever been president is because he had 1 term. That's this line that we like to go with. So in order to avoid having the Jimmy Carter stain on you for only having 1 term, Joe Biden had to keep going at it again. Even when from the beginning, he knew, yeah, I shouldn't do this anymore, but he did.
So consequential, the choices that he made in the last year, the last 18 months. It feels only a little bit weird, just in that he did eventually drop out, which it really did feel impossible when we were pushing for it. And we pushed for it was a long time. It was not fast after that debate, as you pointed out. And almost no politician would leave. He did actually leave, which I think is worth something. It gave us a chance, at least at the presidential election, and likely did have an actual effect. I'm sure her coattails were better than Joe Biden's would have been. Maybe we won some of those other congressional elections or Senate elections or whatever that we wouldn't have. But you're right, he never ever should have thought about running a second time. And obviously, whatever, like, people point out what they see as the failures of Jimmy Carter on a variety of policies, including foreign policy, or the lack of leadership. The lack of leadership, though, of Joe Biden on Gaza, like, if you had just let Netanyahu script out everything that we did, would it have been any different if you had just let AI do it? Or like, there was nothing distinct or brave or understanding or balanced about the effect that he had on that policy. And I think it will be one of the things his presidency is remembered for. And I doubt many people will look back on it positively.
John, your point about him eventually leaving might lead to my shocking rule breaking in a second. But let me save that. First, let me have the audience weigh in. The voting has been tabulated by the accounting firm of no one. And the winner from the members at TYT among the jerk of the year is Elon Musk with 44.5% of the vote. So nearly half the vote going to Elon Musk. So John's nailing it today in terms of
Cenk,
vibing with the audience.
I do think that my official title in the company should probably be shifted to voice of the people, I imagine.
Yeah, look, it's tough to argue with it. I'm a reasonable man. I look at logic, I look at data, and there it is. Okay, now I'm gonna do the exact opposite. I'm gonna overrule everyone, including myself. Because the minute we started and everybody started writing in Netanyahu, I realized it was a mistake. And John put me over the top. I mean, because Biden financed every awful war crime of Netanyahu. But Biden did get out of the race, which is a tiny, tiny bit of saving grace. I mean, he would have lost by at least 400 electoral college votes. It would have been one of the most humiliating defeats if he'd stayed in. It was way, way, way too late. It was all ego driven. And he now says he regrets having left the race and he thinks he would have won. But nevertheless, he did do that right thing. And given what Netanyahu has done, I'm just gonna go totally off the board. It's unacceptable. It's completely breaking every rule we have. But I'm gonna declare the jerk of the year, Benjamin Netanyahu. And Netanyahu is one of the worst world leaders I have ever seen in my lifetime. He's an enormous liar on top of everything else. The gaslighting is unbearable. He demands compliance from American politicians. He controls a huge percentage of our Congress. That's why those fools went and gave him standing ovation after standing ovation, because of the sweet bribes they got from the Israeli industrial complex here in America, the donors that buy the Republican and Democratic Party. He has ethnically cleansed northern Gaza. He's killed over 45,000 people there. The overwhelming majority of them women and children. And he's attacked, I think, 5 to 7, I've literally lost count, neighboring countries, while all pretending that he was doing it for self-defense. I'm sure that they needed some breathing space. And he has shown no interest or decency or humanity when it comes to non-Israeli lives. He'll kill anyone for anything for his own personal gain. He's never even tried to get the second set of hostages back. All the Hamas leaders are dead, all the Hezbollah leaders are dead, but he, even as late as today, has invaded and destroyed the last remaining hospital in northern Gaza. He's one of the most evil men of my lifetime. And it's not just this year that he did this. He's been doing it his whole life. He's a neoconservative that drove us into the Iraq war. He's just evil defined. And so my bad, I should have had him on my list originally. We all should have had him as overwhelming jerk of the year. So I'm using my executive powers here to just upend the process and say, no, the jerk of the year is Benjamin Netanyahu. All right, what do you guys think about that radical move?
I literally avoided it because I was like, everyone else is gonna choose. It's too easy.
Yeah.
It's the reason why I didn't. And I went, oh, wait a second, no one did, probably for the same reason that I didn't. Because I was like, let's go ahead and have some variety here, because it's pretty obvious who it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it makes all sense in the world in terms of like, if you're trying to identify who did the most damage in the world, it's Netanyahu. I guess Putin is probably pretty high up on that list. I also think I would still make a case for Elon Musk in terms of him like single-handedly buying the Republican Party, and now he wants to also buy like far-right neo-Nazi parties in other countries, I guess. He's getting involved in the UK, he's getting involved in Germany, so that is significant. That's not just a rhetorical thing. But yeah, no, Netanyahu is absolutely terrible. The only reason I wouldn't have necessarily suggested him is, and I have the same problem when I do garbage people on the damage report, it almost feels too serious, too dark for jerk of the year. Because what he's doing is it's worse than villains in movies. It's as terrible, as horrendous and inhuman as we can sort of conceive of. So it almost seems like the label doesn't encapsulate the evil on offer.
Yeah. Nevertheless, we're sticking with it. Benjamin Netanyahu, Turk of the Year. Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.